All right, there are 6 of you in the class, and there's 3 of you in here right now. I know at least one person is going to be watching online asynchronously. So let me just get started. All right. And let me start by changing my screen share. And setting it to. All right. Hopefully right now, each and every one of you can see the syllabus on the screen, because we're going to start by going over that. All right. By now, you've all had me for at least one class. Several of you, this is your 4th class or your 2nd or 3rd class, but this course is called Database-Driven Web Development. In some ways, you could almost look at it as being a cross between what you took in the 1st semester and what you took in the 2nd semester. I'm not going to say that's entirely true, but it's not a bad parallel. All right. We will meet for the next 80 class sessions from 12:05 to 3:55. My guess is you'll get done a little bit early today. The last class got done 10 minutes early, and I have no idea with you guys, but we'll see. Here is my information. I will tell you the most important thing as we start, and that is not this program, but the other IT program, the hardware program, has just exploded here at Rankin. They literally have waiting lists. The reason I'm telling you that is I got kicked out of the classroom I'm normally in, and I can't go into the conference room either that a couple of you were in with me last semester. So I'm broadcasting from home. The only reason I'm telling you that is on the off chance that I'm broadcasting and my internet connection goes down, well, we're dead in the water. But if that happens, I will try to immediately email all 6 of you to let you know that I'm going to head into the Wentzville campus. I'm only about 15 minutes away. All right. So I will head into the Wentzville campus, and I have to go into the other building, not the one that we're normally in, but the other one. And they've got a small conference room that they're letting me use in there on an as needed basis. It's the only reason I told you that. Okay. All right. I'm usually online. It says 6 a.m., but I'm usually online by 7 at the latest. And I will be online from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, off and on all weekend long as well. So that shouldn't be a big thing. Hopefully you found in the past that if you got to get a hold of me, it's not that difficult. It makes no sense anymore to go to my office phone because I'm going to very rarely be there. So just email me if you've got a question. All right. So on our program level outcomes, you know what? We're doing a little bit of this. We're virtually doing none of this. We are going to do, in a way, we're going to do some of this because we're going to be working with databases, and we're going to be working with Git and GitHub. All right. Now, if you look on here, I put a bunch of stuff in there for review. You don't have to look at any of that if you don't want to. But sometimes people just ask, they say, where can I get started? All right. I'm going to tell you very quickly, give you a little chronology of what happened here at Rankin since the end of last semester. Mr. Smith, who is my counterpart, he teaches the 2nd year courses at Rankin St. Louis. He quit and took a job back in the private sector. The reason I'm telling you that is Mr. Gudmestad is now teaching all the classes at St. Louis. So he's teaching all the 1st year and all the 2nd year. The reason I'm telling you that is he has never taught this class before. So he is in my list of, every time I send something out, he gets it. All right. And he has been watching Mr. Smith's videos that he made last year, and he may or may not have watched any of mine. I have no idea. All right, but I'm just kind of letting you know what's going on. So when I talked to Mr. Gudmested, he's like, this will be an interesting semester, he said, because I know almost nothing about Node. He said, I don't know Express. I don't know MongoDB, and I have just an intro into React. So he said they're going to end up doing quite a bit of stuff together, writing projects, etc., as a class. I'm planning on doing the same thing. We're going to do a lot of stuff together. That said, we might do a project where together we do 75% of it. And then I tell you to put your own stamp on it and make it your own, and then, basically finish the last 25%. In addition, one of the things that I'm thinking of having us do is we're going to create just a regular website. All right, something similar to what we've done in the past. All right, but then we're going to take that website, we're going to add a database to it, and we're basically going to set it up and stand it up so it could be your own website. In other words, like a professional website. All right, we're going to do that. Not today, of course, but we're going to do that. So this course, you can read this yourselves, but this is a course on what's called the Mern stack. And if you've never heard that term before, Mern is an acronym. The M stands for MongoDB, so you're going to learn another type of database in here. Express, also called Express.js. React, also called React.js. And Node, also called Node.js. So Mern is MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. All right. When I was first coming in here to teach this class, the way I taught it last year is I jumped right into Node almost on day one. We got into Node, we started building stuff using Node. Then we added Express onto that. All right. Then when we got done with Express, we added MySQL onto that. Then when we got done with the MySQL, we added MongoDB onto that. Then when we got done with that, we added React. The reason I'm telling you that is that's the way I planned on teaching it this year. That's the way I wrote the syllabus. And then last Thursday, I talked to Mr. Gudmested, who said, Jeff, if you don't mind, could you kind of keep lockstep in with the way that I'm doing it? And I said, well, I can probably do that. How are you doing it? All right. So the way that he's doing it, as you probably guess, is different than the way I planned on doing it. All right. And I want to see if I can show you this. Where is that? Give me a second here. There it is. All right. So let me change here. All right. This literally is our Google Drive where the instructors share information. Okay. So some tests are in here, etc., some other stuff. So what I'm showing you in here is this is the order, and it's from, I'm going to go up this way, that Mr. Gudmested is teaching it. So he's in there lecturing right now, and he's going over whatever's in classroom management. I'm doing my own. Then he's going to go into MySQL. Then he's going to go into MongoDB. Then he's going to go into Node and Express. Then he's going to go into building REST APIs. Then authorization and authentication, and then finally a little bit of React. And he's asked that I try to basically keep lockstep with him. He has no problem as long as I put all my homeworks out there. If my homeworks are different than his, or I can use his, but our tests should virtually be the same. The reason I'm telling you that is because, as you can see, if you compared what's here with what's on the syllabus, the order is different. All right. In addition, what I'm going to do that Mr. Gudmested is not going to do is we're going to take this week and we're going to have a review of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right. He, I think, is jumping right into his classroom management and is going into MySQL right away. I could be wrong, but that's at least what he had inferred to me when I talked to him last week. Why are we doing this? Because with at least a couple of you in this class, and that would be Mr. Kottner and Mr. Wharton, it's been over, quite a while since you've had the AWD 1000 class, the web development technologies. With some of the rest of you, you might have had it last summer. In fact, John, I think you're the only one who had it last summer, and everybody else had it like fall a year ago. So I've decided I thought it would be a good idea. And maybe, if you disagree, when you're doing your course evaluations at the end of the year, write down, we didn't need this. That's fine. Then next time I won't do it. All right. But I do want you to know, and I'm not going to go through any of these, but if I go in here and I go out and search my YouTube channel, oops, and I search my YouTube channel and I put in there under playlists and I look at the playlist for this class, which is Fall 2022 AWD1111 database-driven websites, you'll notice if you look in there, I already have 53 videos. I did all these this summer. No, I don't want to hear that guy. All right. But what I did was this. Okay. The first thing is, and some of you have heard me talk about this guy before, maybe you haven't, but there's a guy that I follow a lot online, and his name is Brad Traversy. All right. He's got all sorts of, under his Traversy Media, he's got YouTube videos. He must have hundreds of them out there where he does crash courses on everything you can think of. All right. Well, one of the things that Mr. Traversy did this past spring is he wrote a book, and it's called the Web Dev Guide. You can buy it yourselves. I'm making it available to you because he's selling it. I paid the $9.99 and I bought it. All right. It has 306 pages in it, and he goes through all sorts of stuff in there. All right. He talks about he doesn't talk about like C# or Android, but he talks all about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, MongoDB, Node.js, you name it. Most of the stuff we're covering in those two classes. So what I did was I went through his 306-page PDF, and what I created out of there were about, I guess, 5 different lessons. All right, notice 23 minutes, 24 minutes, etc. All right, so I did that first, and I guess there's 9 lessons. All right, then I went out and I did this. I went out, there's another guy that I sort of follow, and his name is Flavio Copes, and he's got a website called thevalleyofcode.com. So I went out to his website, and he's got free books in here that if you just sign up for his mailing list, you get them for free. So what I did was I went through his HTML handbook, his CSS handbook, his JavaScript handbook, his Node.js handbook, and most of his React handbook. All right. The reason, again, I'm telling you this is that's what you'll see in here. All right. In addition, and you don't have to do this right now, but do this if you can before tomorrow. And that is, if you go out onto github.com, you may or may not have noticed. All right, let's see. That I've already got a repo for this class. And what I have in there is I have gone out and myself, I have gone out and created a repo, and these are all articles. So there's probably 10 or 15 articles on HTML, on CSS, on JavaScript, on APIs, on Node, etc. You don't have to do anything with that if you don't want to. But a lot of the material that's in here is things I am going to end up going over in class here. So if you wanted your own copies, that's where you can go out to get it from. All right. Okay. So I'm going to switch again. I'm going to stop sharing and start my share again. Go back. And let's see. Do you have the syllabus back up on your screen? Can anybody answer?
It's on 10 GitHub repos you cannot miss out on.
All right, yeah, because it's a stupid thing. This is the most unintuitive Teams. I hate it. All right, I'm not supposed to talk like that, but I hate it anyway. All right. Now do you see the syllabus?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So all I want to do in here is, again, I've already said this, but all right, I've given you a quick little introduction. You should all know by now where the handbook is. All right. We literally, in this class, we shouldn't have to miss for any reason. The only reason that we would miss would be if my internet is down and the internet is down in Wentzville, because then there's no way for us to communicate. And if that does happen, and I consider it to be, we can't miss a day for whatever reason, I'll go out, and you all know, you've seen me do this, or maybe you have, but I'll go out and I'll use Camtasia, which is my screen share package, and I'll do my own lecture because I don't need an internet connection. And then I'll put it out on the YouTube channel when the internet comes back up, if that matters. Okay. So I'm taking for granted you all remember Git and GitHub. So it says in here, today we'll have a little review of HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript material. All right. Now, the other thing regarding that is what I would like each and every one of you to do. You don't have to do it this second, of course, but I'd like you to do it this week. And that is, there's 2 websites I want you to go out to. And of course, it's going to tell me I'm not sharing anymore, but that's okay. So the first one is Css Grid Dot Io, and it's a site by Mr. Wes Bose. I may have even asked you to do this last year. I don't remember. But if you sign up, notice totally free, and it's a refresher on CSS Grid. It's under Css Grid Dot Io. If you go out then to Flexbox.io, you get Wes Bose's What the Flexbox course, which again is free. Now, each one of them takes about 1 to 2 hours to go through. You're like, well, that isn't fair. Well, yeah, I'm asking you to go through it. I am going to probably let you go no later than 3 today. All right, so you'll have time today to at least start looking at them. The reason for this is tomorrow you're actually going to get your first assignment. And I'm going to ask you to use Flexbox and or Grid, probably use them in conjunction with one another, and make a website for me. It'll all be laid out for you by tomorrow that's responsive. All right, you can still use media queries, but I want Flexbox and I want Grid in there. The reason for that is at least 2 of you in this class, this is your last class. You're graduating in December. So I want this to look really, really, really damn good and damn professional. Pardon my dams. All right. One of the things that I'm working on and is bringing my React rather a little bit more up to speed. And what I'm hoping to have us do, what I'm about to tell you, you don't have to do it. But at the end of the semester, when we are working on our portfolios, I am going to show you, this is my plan at least, how to create your portfolio totally in React. The advantage of you doing that is React is unbelievably hot right now. So if you can show somebody that, yeah, anybody can go in and they can use Mobirise, or they can use straight HTML and JavaScript and CSS and make a portfolio. But if you make yours in React, it's going to, I think, at least really stand out. And what I'm going to do is, typically, we make your portfolio for this semester. I think it's worth 150 points. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 50 point bonus for anybody who tries to do it in React. So if you've lost some points throughout the semester, it might be a way for you to gain some back. All right, let's leave it at that. So like I said, I want you to go through and look at Css Grid Dot Io and Flexbox Dot Io. If you're not aware of this, if you go out to wesbose.com, West, W-E-S, Bose, B-O-S, there it is. He's got tons of courses. Anything that says premium, you got to pay for. But he's got a lot of them that once you scroll through are not premium. So notice here's a JavaScript 30. So he's got 30 days of JavaScript projects for free. He's got his grid for free. He's got his Flexbox for free. He's got, if you want to learn to use command line, for free. A Redux class, don't worry about what that is right now, for free. A Markdown class for free. Most of the rest of them are, they cost. All right. And depending on how good I think they are, I might ask Mr. Corrigan if I can have some money and maybe get a couple of them for myself and go through them. I don't know. But he does have, for these classes, he does have like intro videos so you can see what the class is about. All right. So jumping back then, sorry, it's going to be a little bit back and forth today, but jumping back into the syllabus, which means I've got to change my screen share again. All right. So this week is designed to be our refresher on HTML, JavaScript, and CSS more than anything else. All right. I think that Bose does a really good job with Grid and Flexbox IO. If you say, well, I don't have the time for that, whatever, I know that Mr. Gudmus did on his YouTube channel, did a really good video as well on Flexbox. I don't know if he's got one out there on Grid or not. All right. So we are going to talk a little bit today and go over some of this stuff. All right. Some review on HTML, CSS, etc. Then tomorrow, we're going to finish that up. I'm going to give you more time in class tomorrow to complete those 2 Wes Bose courses. All right. We're going to start talking a little bit more about what the kind of JavaScript that we're going to use in this class, and you're going to get your first assignment. When you get your first assignment, I've already done most of it. I'm going to show you what I did, and I'm going to ask you to do something similar. That said, will it have to exactly mimic mine? No. I want it to be yours. But what I want us to do again is to first create a regular vanilla JavaScript type of site, and then go, and as we go through different things in here, we're going to take this site and eventually stand it up on our own Heroku account. All right. And that's what we'll be moving towards. And you'll notice that this first assignment that I give you tomorrow is going to be due by midnight on Sunday. Now, it says here on day 3, we're going to go into some intermediate JavaScript. So I want to go back and review things like arrow functions, and it'll get us to an introduction into what we're going to be doing in our class here, our node class here. All right. So Thursday, we'll be finishing that up. Every Friday, all semester long, I plan on making it a lab day. What that means is on Fridays, I won't be taping anything. I will be online. I will be available either for a Teams discussion or if you want to email back and forth. But every Friday will be a lab. I'm doing this in both the morning class and the afternoon class for two reasons. Number one, selfishly, it gives me more time to prepare for the next week. But also it's done to make sure that all of you have got time that you can be working on, all right, that you can be working on homework. So, if you look at it, I know we don't meet for 4 hours because it's 3 hours and 50 minutes. But if we cut that down, if we just say it's a 4-hour class and we meet 80 times, that's 320 hours. And out of those 320 hours, you're getting about 60 of them. All right. 1/5 of the class is going to basically just be set up for lab. In addition, there will be days which will be just lab days. All right. But I want us to be in here and I want us to be doing a lot of work where the plan is when we go into a new topic, we'll do something as a class. I'll get you to a certain point and I'll say, now you finish this. And then for your test, you will basically create something on your own that'll be based off of something similar to what we do in class. If that doesn't make sense, just bear with me until we get to that point. All right. And that's how we're going to set everything up in here. Again, I believe at least that's how Mr. Gudmisted is doing it. So when we get into next week and we've got in here, I'm going to cut this down to just make it about a week of JavaScript because he's not doing any. But then notice it'll say here, begin discussion of node. No, we're going to be doing again the MySQL first. Some of the MySQL that we do, some of it will be review. We're going to go back and look at MySQL again like you haven't even had it. All right. When we get done with the MySQL stuff, we will do a project with MySQL. Again, I'll bring it to a certain point and then have you finish it. And then for your test, you will do your own similar type. What I'm hoping on here is by having 5 or 6 of these different lessons and having you have 5 or 6 different projects, you'll want to be basically putting all of these projects out into your portfolio. Not to be funny, stupid, or anything else, but I mean, let's face it. If you do a simple CSS project, it's probably not worth you putting in your portfolio. All right. So the idea is between this class and those of you who are taking the class in spring, you're going to have enough projects between those two classes that you're going to be able to make a really good looking portfolio. All right. So again, I just want to make sure you do understand that this is going to be off. I'm not going to take the time to go back and change this. But I do promise that what I am going to do with you is at the end of every class period, I'm going to review what we went over and I'm going to review what we're going to go over the next day. All right, I'll do that. And since I skipped this, most of it, all right, again, we're going to meet. So attendance is the following. If you didn't hear this from last semester or in the past, for instance, you will have an assignment that will be due by midnight, 11:59 and 59 seconds this Sunday, the 28th of August. If you turn me in any portion of that, even if it's incomplete, if you can show me you've made a concerted effort to at least try, you will be marked present for the class. All right. Now, I'm not like Mr. Gudmis did. He talked about having written tests for this class. I wasn't going to have any. I want to look through his stuff to see if he is or not. I will tell you, if we have written tests, there will be no more than 5 or 6 of them, one for each of these topics that we're going over. But it won't be like in the C# class where we had 22 chapter book and you went over 22, you had like 20 or whatever tests. That won't happen. All right. So again, as long as you turn something in, you'll be marked as present. If it's August 29th, so if it's next Monday, a week from today, and I look and student X has not turned in anything, then student X will be marked absent for the previous week. You get a total of 2 absences with this being an online class. Then I'm required to drop you. All right. Now, 2 things about that. First of all, if you get COVID or really sick with something else, you let me know right away. You don't have to even worry about contacting Miss Bruggeman. I'll do that. But you let me know right away. In addition, what they're asking you to do now is, if you've had a positive COVID test, is to take a picture that has something like today's newspaper on it, or something that you can prove that it happened today, and you can prove it's your test. All right. And if that's the case, I'll work with you on that. Okay. But if I have to drop you, you can still appeal it. We had this happen at least once last semester where somebody, was dropped and then they just appealed it and they were immediately put back in the class. I looked this morning and it looks like all of you, none of you were on the NA list, which is, that not applicable or not having paid or whatever. And that's good. I'm supposed to look at that every day for the next 2 weeks in case something happens and one of you get on that list. If you do, you will have to either call Patrick Lynn or go in and see him. And Patrick's stuff is in here. There's his email and there's his phone number. All right. Academic honesty. Well, that's going to be, as I told the people this morning, that's an interesting one. But I will tell you, when we have tests, you will have more than 1 day to complete the test. So I'm not going to give a test out and put it out there at 12 o'clock and have it do at 4. All right. I'm not going to do that. Typically what I'll do is, if we had a test today, it would either be due Wednesday or it would be due Friday. All right. That's usually the way that I'm going to do it, but I'm counting on you. To be honest, you've all shown that you're good students. You've all made it to the second year that you're going to be doing your own work. All right. With Rankin that even though it shows a D here, we don't give Ds. So if you're below a 74.5, you fail. All right. This workload table is basically saying, that out of class, you're going to have to do your share of work. And I don't even know if that number of hours is right or not. Some of you might have to do as much work out of class as you do in class. All right. Everybody's different. You know that. All right. No one has taken this class who is still at this campus. So as far as tutors, if you're really running into problems, get a hold of me. I will see if I can get you a tutor. If you want a tutor, get a hold of me. There is no charge for tutors. All right. And tutors are paid $10 an hour. All right. I don't think the thing with disabilities, first of all, I don't think any of you have a physical or other type of disability. But even if you do, I don't think this is going to matter, because if you're given tests and homework, you're always going to have multiple days to work on them. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. All right. For career services, 2 things on this. First off, and I can tell you this tomorrow, I forgot to print off the schedule, but I think it's in October will be the job fair at the St. Louis campus, and probably at the beginning of November will be the one at the Rankin campus or the Wentzville campus. All right. And I would strongly suggest, even if you're 3rd semester and not 4th, you go to the St. Louis job fair. Start making some contacts, see what's out there, etc. I can't force you to do it. I wouldn't force you to do it if I could. All right. With the Snow days and emergencies, we already went over that. All right. And let's see. Yeah, assumed classes will always be held. One thing I didn't mention to the people this morning that I want to say now, so I'm going to do it right now. So I'm going to stop sharing and start sharing again. All right. And that is, if you have not already done so, you might want to go out to Inside Rankin, and somewhere in this mess for Inside Rankin, I don't know where it is, but somewhere you can go in here and you can double check to make sure that you're on the list where you get the notices. I don't know if there's any notices in here that are ever going to matter because we're all online, but they recommend that I have you go in and know about that anyway. You should all know by now, 2 weeks from today, there is no class. It is Labor Day. All right. I will not be online during that day. All right. I'm having company come over and they're going to be there for at least part of that day. So I probably won't be on at least until the evening on that day. Could be wrong, but I think that's the way it'll be. All right. Also, after that, the next time we have off is November 11th, which is nicely a Friday. All right. And it's Veterans Day. So I probably will take that Thursday, the 10th, and make that a lab day so you're not, quote, screwed, unquote, out of a lab day. After that, I think it's the 24th and the 25th. That's Thanksgiving and the day after that. And you're off those 2 days. And other than that, I think it's December 15th or 16th is our last day. All right. Now, a couple things just so you know you may want to consider. And if you don't want to consider this, don't do it. All right. It's interesting. I got called this summer on a couple people, on a couple graduates for that they had me down for a referral. And in both cases, I got asked, did they do anything outside of school? The reason I'm telling you that is, and I'll have to get you the information, but there is a club in here that if you've got, I think it's a 3.5 average or above that you can join. I'll try to get you the information on it. But there are different activities that you can, in clubs you can join, even if you're going to be online, because a lot of them are through St. Louis. But it never hurts on your resume to have something like that in there. And going along with that, this goes back to the job fair. If you have not already done so, make sure that you go out to the Rankin.edu website, and somewhere in here, I don't know where, you will be able to find the Rankin connection. May or may not show it from right here. I just looked for it. It doesn't. Careers at Rankin. All right, that might be it. Well, that's at Rankin, so I don't know. Career services. Somewhere in here, you should be able to find the Rankin connection. If you have not signed up for it already, there it is. Rankin connection, student alumni login. All right, so you go out there, you click on this if you haven't done so, and you come in there. I'm in as a student myself, all right, because that's the way they want us to get in. But they give you different jobs that are in here. I've got mine set up so it's got IT and it has AWD. All right, because sometimes the ones that are marked IT, they want programming people in there. All right, but I've already had a few people that I've pushed these things towards some. I mean, I just push them towards the graduates. So I've done that already. All right, and that's the reason that I've done it. All right. So trying to remember if I've forgotten anything that I wanted to cover in this part of the lecture. Are there any questions on anything we've gone over thus far? Anybody? You don't even have to answer. If it's just silence, fine. I'll take it for granted that everything made sense. All right. Then right before, because I'm going to give you a break, you'll get a break from 12:50 to 1, from 1:50 to 2, and from 2:50 to 3. All right, every day that we meet for the entire time. Okay. In addition, we'll probably finish, even if we have a full class day, we'll probably finish by maybe we'll skip our last break. I don't know. and we'll finish by 3:45. All right. Okay. So that said, I'm going to have to change in just a second, but that's okay. Let's see. So let me change one more time here on my share window. And I'm going to literally spend 5 minutes on this, then we're taking a break. Hopefully you see on your screen right now an article, and you've got this, or you will if you pull in that repo. It's called Mern Stack and Overview. I'm not going to read a lick of it to you. All right. But the big thing with Mern, more than anything else, is we're going to be using Node.js. And what Node.js does is it allows you to write JavaScript for the server. All the JavaScript we've written thus far has been for the client. We are now going to start writing it for the server. Express is an add-on. It's an add-on to Node.js. Express is an add-on, and it allows you to make your life a little bit easier than it would be without using it. All right. MongoDB is what's referred to as a NoSQL or a NoSQL database. No doesn't mean like you shake your head up and down. No is an acronym for not only. So a NoSQL database means not only SQL. So we're going to be using MongoDB in a few weeks. All right. But the plan is what we are going to do first is we're going to write an application, and I haven't written it yet, but something we're going to do in MySQL. Then we're going to go back and do the same thing in MongoDB. So you can start seeing the similarities and, even more importantly, the differences between them. All right. Then again, we're going to get into Node. My hope is that we do a Node project with MySQL and a Node, at least to start with, one Node project with MongoDB. All right. And we will have already gone in and started working with Express at that time. All right. So let's see. The whole thing together is called the Mern stack. There's also a mean stack, which is MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node.js. And there's a Maven stack, which is MongoDB, Express, Vue, and Node.js. But you can look at this and get a little explanation of what MongoDB is, of what Express is. We're going to be learning how to do things using the model view controller architecture. All right. And you can also learn what React is. And it's a pretty short article. There's more on Node. It's 3 or 4 pages, 5 pages, I guess, but it'll at least get you started. All right, I brought that one up very quickly. And another one that's called Intro to Mern, which is a very similar article. It's a little longer. All right. But what I want to do is give you your break in just a minute. It'll be 12:50. But when we come back from the break, I want to go over this. And then I want to start talking a little bit, giving you some review of HTML, CSS, etc. So it is 12:50. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 1 o'clock. I'm going to leave this on, but I haven't eaten yet, so I'm going to go in the other room. I'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah.
Are you going to go on how to set up like GitHub Desktop or like VS Code?
We are going to talk some about VS Code. The GitHub Desktop, you can do that on your own if you want to. I don't use it. I just use the regular Git and GitHub.
Okay.
But if you want to use the desktop, you can.
Okay, because like, are you gonna show like how to like install VS Code? Because I got a new computer, so I was just okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Remind me of that. We'll do that right after the break because there's a couple things I like to show you with that too. So thank you.
All
Okay?
right, thanks.
All right. Again, I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Oh, sorry, I'm a little late. So let's see. All right, so where I left off last time, I said I just quickly wanted to go over this. All right, I wasn't sure how to really approach this, you know, this class as far as the first day. It's starting to get you acclimated into stuff. But I did want to mention a couple things here. Now notice right here, it says this is a document database. It's like, what the heck is that? All right, we're not going to be using terms anymore like table and record. We're going to be using names like document and collection. All right. And the biggest difference that you're going to find when we get into this is when we use MySQL or MySQL, it's very regimented. In other words, if I've got a database and I set up a table in there and that table has 5 fields in it and they're all required, I've got to put them in for every record. If I leave them out or do them wrong, it's going to break. MongoDB gives you basically kind of suggestions for, we'll put it that way for now at least. But you can go out and you can have every record that's in the database can be different. And I don't mean just the primary key. You can have one record can have 3 fields, the next one could have 6, the next one could have 4. So you can do a lot of stuff that you cannot do with MySQL. Then when we get to Express and we start talking about that, I'm first going to show you, for lack of better words, kind of the wrong way to create a project. All right. And then we'll talk about Express because it'll start to show you the right way to do a project. All right. And before we really get into Express, we will talk about Node. And again, what Node is, give you the 5-cent definition. 13 years ago, there was a developer who managed to get the code for the V8 engine, which is the engine that powers Chrome. He took that engine, added to it some C++ code, and then you were allowed to write JavaScript on the server. You should already be able to just figure out yourselves why being able to use JavaScript on the client side and the server side is a good thing. More than anything else, the thing that should come to mind for you is the fact that you're using the same language for both the client and the server. All right. And that's a really big thing. What you are learning in this class, when we were in the AWD1111 class, you learned front-end development. What you are learning in this class is back-end development. When you put those two together, that's typically referred to as full stack development. So why should you care? Because if you go out to places like Indeed and you go out to places like even Stack Overflow, etc., a lot of them will have, if you're a front-end developer today, you're probably averaging around $75,000 a year. If you're a back-end, you might be making $5,000 more. If you're a full stack developer where you can do it all, you're typically into 6 figures. Now, I'm not that stupid in that I'm not going to say, yeah, you're going to leave here and get a job for 6 figures. But no, that may or may not be true. But what you're doing is you're making yourself unbelievably more marketable. All right. And again, if you don't believe me, just go out to Indeed.com and put in something like full stack developer and start seeing what you're going to get hit, the number of hits you get and how much money it is. All right, then finally, notice it looks a little different because React is client side. You're like, well, wait a minute, this is a server side class. Yeah, it's another way of basically bundling together all of this stuff that you see in here. All right. So again, there's some more writing on it. You can read that if you've got an interest. But it says, how does this work? It says it allows you to create what's referred to as a 3-tier architecture. All right. And some drawings that you'll see of this will be two-tier, just so you know. But in a nutshell, this is going to be our model view controller type of architecture, because where we've got our database and where we've got our logic for being able to use our database, that's what's referred to as the model in a model view controller architecture. What we show the end user, the HTML, etc., that we show the end user, that's the view. But the model and the view do not ever talk directly with one another. All right. Rather, the go-between, the intermediary, is the controller. So with model view controller, that's what it is. And what you're going to find is we're literally going to create, in not too much time, we'll create a folder that's called models, and all of our database logic will go in there. Then we'll create another one that's called views, and virtually all of our stuff that we want to show, the actual implementation, all right, that we want to show. In other words, our HTML files, our CSS, our client-side JavaScript, that'll all go in there. Then, rather than having a folder called controllers, which we could do, we're instead going to have a folder called routes. And in routes, we're going to have a bunch of files that will have the word controller in them. And that's how we will route things back and forth. All right. And again, is this a big deal one way or the other? Well, I want you to understand something. And that is, if I come in here and I type in as an example, all right, if I type in, I don't know, let's just say, oops, I don't want to do it there. I wanted to do it up here, but it probably won't let me. So let's see. So if I come in there and type in something like, whatever, like google.com, just as an example, fine, I'll put it on its own page. So if I come in there and type in this, all right, you know what happens, but do you? All right, I'm not trying to be funny or anything else here, but think about what actually happens if you're at your address bar and you type in google.com. When you type in google.com, what literally happens is an HTTP or an HTTPS request is made. So the key thing is you're the one making the request. All right. And what happens? Well, out at Google, a server will answer this request. Okay. So you make a request, the server will answer this request. This answer is known as an HTTP or HTTP response. All right. And that response will be shown as typically HTML or as an HTML-H. Now, why did I take the time to show you this? No, not to waste my time or yours, but what I want you to understand is in the AWD1111 class, the Web Development Technologies class, we did that. That is client-side programming. Yeah, we would set up websites and the like, but we didn't exactly stand them up and allow them to do a lot of different things. Really, more than anything else, all right, most of the websites that we created were pretty much just static HTML that showed stuff. And if you've never heard of this before, back in the day, before there were websites, a lot of companies, when they'd send out their salespeople, they would have literally a little paper folder, trifold piece of paper. It was so folded into thirds, and it would have all the information about the company on it. And then when websites started, what a lot of companies did was they took that trifold and they put it into web pages. In other words, it was HTML that really didn't change often, if ever. But that's not how the real world works. All right. What we want to be able to do is to stand up our own site, let people log into that site, set up accounts on that site, do different things on that site. And that's what we're talking about with bringing in the server side. All right. And it's not a big thing, but once you start seeing this in action, we're always going to be referring to, because it's typically done this way, the request is going to be referred to as REQ, and the response is going to be referred to as RES. Now, that won't make any sense to you right now, but as we get going, it'll make more and more sense to you. All right. So when you start working with React, that's going to be, for lack of better words, that's its own animal. All right. When you create a file in React, the HTML file that you want to use in your body, quite often, it'll consist of 3 lines of code, your whole body. 2 of those lines will be a beginning div and an ending div. All right. And in fact, typically 2 lines, because you'll give that div a name, and it's usually called root. And what React will do is it'll allow you to fill up that div with everything that you need. React is something different. All right. And what I mean by that, and the reason I'm bringing this up right now, just so you hear about it a little bit, is React allows you to write what's called JSX, which is JavaScript extensions. And what you'll be able to do in your .js files is you'll be able to write what almost looks like pure HTML inside of there. All right. And return that back. And again, if that doesn't make sense, it'll make more sense when we get into it. All right. Node, I've already mentioned to you what that is. All right. It's known as a JavaScript runtime. All right. And Express is a way that you can add things to Node. And yeah, if you go out to the Express website, that's what you're going to find. It'll say that it's fast, unopinionated, and minimalist. Web framework for Node.js. What that means is the fast should make sense, but the unopinionated is it doesn't tell you how to do things. It's the old, and I've given this example before, that if I said tomorrow we're going to all meet at the St. Louis campus, I wouldn't tell you how to get there. You could each get there in your own different way. Even if you live close to one another, you could go with different routes and still get there. Well, that's what Express allows you to do. And it's minimalist, which means it provides very little code for you. So you can basically do whatever you want yourself. All right. Now, the other reason that I brought that up is talking about this. All right. Talking about get and talking about post. All right. And going back to this in here. You have done stuff like this before. Form. And you might have said action equals, and I'm going to just make this up, so don't worry about it. But I'm going to say here, I don't know, process.php, PHP. Method equals get. All right, something like that, and then you had a form. So inside of here, you might have a whole bunch of stuff. So we might have, I'll keep it real simple. Input type equals text. I'm going to just leave it like that. And before that, we'll put in here label for equals name. I'm just going to have 2 fields in here, a name and then a button. So for equal name, and I'll put in here name label. All right. Now you've done stuff like this before. There's nothing new in here, except in the past you've done this. ID equals name. And we're still going to do stuff like that. But you may or may not remember, because one of the things I try to stress on you is not only can you put an ID in here, you can also put a name in there. So why am I telling you this? This name here and that name don't mean the same thing. This name that's here and that's here, that refers to whatever you're going to type into that text box. This is the way you're going to refer to that value in server-side code. So we're going to have, in fact, a lot of times we won't even need to put an ID in here, but we will need a name. You will need that. All right. Now, so what does this have to do with anything? Well, what I want to make sure you understand, and this was explained to you by me, maybe better than Mr. Gudmus did, I don't know. But I want you to understand the difference between saying this and saying this. All right. For much of the work that we're going to end up doing in here, for much of the work, we'll be using get. All right. Now, I believe that everybody who's in this class, when you had your beginning MySQL, you had it with me. And one of the things that we talked about in MySQL was the select statement. And I said with the select, you can view but not change the data. All right. That's what get is. Get allows you to look at things but not change them. On the other hand, when we got into and we talked about create, and we talked about update, and we talked about delete, those do change the data. All right, that is post. So when we're doing creates and we're doing updates and we're doing deletes, we're going to be setting our method to post. If we're just showing data to the user, excuse me, but not allowing him or her to change it, it'll be a get. Also, this in here, this is going to be the file that we're going to write. So we might say, for example, insert widget.js. So if I go in here, my method is post, and I bring up something that's going to have a form in it that's going to allow me to put a new widget, and that's what's in this form. And I go and I click the submit button, which I'd have to put in here. All right. So when I click that submit button, it's going to call this file. That's bringing things around full cycle, as opposed to the way that they've been done in the past. All right. And when I say in the past, I mean when we were doing things client side. In fact, a lot of times we either didn't put anything in here at all. So we might have left this action out. We might have left the method out, or we may have just said, you know, the method doesn't matter. So put in post, put in get, it doesn't matter. In this class, it will matter. All right. So what I'm doing again is I'm giving you a high level overview of the kind of stuff we're going to be working on. All right. So what about the database? All right. The whole idea behind the database is a word that I used in the C# class, and that is persistence. So if you want something to be able to persist, in other words, one of the first projects we'll probably end up doing in here, all right, when we go and do our first full project, is we'll probably do something like a simple to-do list. And I'd like to do that twice. I'd like to do it once using MySQL and once using Mongo. So the idea is you make this to-do list. You got it up on your screen. Now, you're done working on it for today. You've got 10 items on there. You've got 3 of them completed. So you mark those, or you delete those, or you do whatever. Now you've got 7 items to work on. You save the to-do list. You get out. You come back the next day. Those 7 items are still there. That's persistence. All right. So they're saying here, why should you choose the Mern stack for building mobile and web applications? You can read all these yourselves. All right. The cost effectiveness I've already talked about, One of the reasons it becomes cost effective is you're using the same language. All right. If you've got programmers that are trained as being full stack developers, they can go and do work on both the client side and on the server side. And if you go to work for a company that's not humongous, you may be asked to wear every one of those hats. You may be the front end person, the back end person, the database person, etc. All right. And it also helps for performance. And another thing we're going to get into, this is really, so far at least, the only class where this is going to matter is we're going to talk about security. And we're going to talk about 2 words related to security. And I don't know, because I don't know you that well, if you know the difference between these 2 words. And they are authorization versus authentication. All right. If I come here at the beginning of the day and I log in, okay, and I'm asked for, let's assume for a second, I'm asked for a login and a password. So it brings up a form and it asks for my login and it asks for my password. If I put one or both of those in there incorrectly, I should get a message and I should not be allowed to log in. Why? Because I have not been authenticated. That's authentication. All right. So now once I do log in, what I can see based on who I am is authorization. So what I mean by that is, and I've used this example with you before, if I go out to InsideRankin.org and you go out to InsideRankin.org, there's things I can see that you can't see because I'm authorized, for example, to see all of your grades for my classes. You're not authorized. You're authorized to see how your own grades are, but you can't see somebody else's grades. So again, we're going to put all of that stuff together. And my hope is, like I said, we can start working on something fairly quickly and build an entire application. And as we start doing it, we'll create a bunch of similar, or a bunch of projects together to a certain point, and then you'll finish it up, and then we'll keep working on this bigger project. All right. So let's see. So with the security, that's where we'll talk about authentication and authorization. All right. Okay. Yeah. Easy to switch between client and server because we're only using one language. So again, they come in here and they talk about advantages and disadvantages. Again, we are going to be working with this. All right. And if, you know, with some people, and there's all sorts of videos and stuff that you can go online and see about this. One of the better explanations from a short video that I watched a long time ago was this, that the controller is basically kind of the middleman or middle person. So if I go into a restaurant, and I'm not talking about McDonald's or something, but if I go into a classier restaurant, I'm not able to walk in there, walk into the kitchen, find the chef and say, hey, I'd like a steak, medium well, baked potato, and green beans. It doesn't work like that. Instead, I sit down and a waiter comes up to me and says, you know, do you know what you want to order? Sooner or later, she or he will say that to me. All right. And I do that. So the waiter is basically the controller because the waiter is going back and is the go-between between me, I'm the view, and the model, which is really the chef. All right. So we're going to be working with that. All right. And I think that's enough of that. But like I said, I know it might sound a little bit, boy, you're all over the place today, but I wanted you to hear some of that terminology. And I wanted you to become familiar with some of that terminology and not have it where when we get to it, you're like, we never talked about this before. We never talked about this before, because we will have. All right. All right. Now let me change my screen share for just a moment here. All right, hopefully what you can see on the screen right now is once you go, and again, you don't have to do this, but if you do go out to where I put that repo out there, and I'll give you the URL for the repo in just a moment, but if you go out there for that, this is what you're going to find. All right, I've broken it down into about 9 or 10 different areas. So there's a bunch of different articles on HTML. All right, including the handbook that I showed you by Flavio Copes before, and a thing from Goal Kicker that I want to go out to in just a moment. All right, then there's about 9 or 10 of them on CSS. Then there's more than that, a bunch of them on JavaScript. Why? Because you have to start getting a comfort level with talking about the newer types of JavaScript. What does that mean? Well, if you remember from the AWD1111 class, when we got towards the end of the class, probably the last week or so, we talked a little bit about node in there. We talked about arrow functions. We talked about promises. We talked about callbacks. You're going to be introduced to those again, because virtually everything that you end up doing when you're programming Mern or Mean or Mevin stack applications has to do with you working with callback functions. Whether you're doing a callback with regular callbacks, or whether you're doing a callback with promises, or whether you're doing a callback with async and await. And if you say, I don't know what those mean, some of them are discussed in here. Some of them we'll be discussing in class as well. All right. Then there's this, you don't even need to look at this if you don't want to. There's somebody created a portfolio and it's pretty simplistic, but I just put it out there. Then we're going to talk about APIs. All right. And I've talked about APIs before, but we're going to talk about them again. And what is an API? It's an application program interface. All right. The key word there, believe it or not, is interface. And it's important that you understand the difference between an interface and an implementation. All right. An interface, all right, an interface is basically what you see. I've given you this example before where I pull up the calculator on screen and I put in a number, 267. I hit the square root key and boom, it gives us 16 point something, which is the square root of that. But I don't know how that works. I don't know physically what happens inside of that calculator between the time I put in the number and hit the square root key and the time an answer is given to me. What happens behind the scenes, all right, that's the implementation. All right. So the reason that I'm telling you that is we're going to be looking a lot in here, a lot on APIs. So we're going to look at how to use some existing APIs. Once we get to a certain point, then what we're going to be doing is writing our own APIs. And what are, with an API, what are you able to do? Guess what? I've already shown you. You're able to do CRUD applications. CRUD is C for create, R for read, which is like a select, U for update, and D for delete. So for instance, one of the ones I'm hoping that we can do is we will do something, and what this will probably be when we bring React into the equation, but we'll create some kind of a weather application where we'll have a simple interface where you can put in a city, click on a button, and boom, it'll immediately go out to what's called the Open Weather, I think it's Open Weather API, application program interface, and it'll grab the temperature and the current conditions, and we can return anything we want. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be doing. All right. There's also some stuff in here on Node. You'll notice there's a lot of stuff in here. All right. I wouldn't expect you to take a look at every article that's in here. Have I read every article? At one point or another, pretty much every one. Here's some more stuff on React. Here's some stuff on full stack, and that full stack is basically, it's Mern for us. And finally, there's some stuff just on CRUD. All right, so you can start taking a look in there. What I want to do and what this class is supposed to be doing is kind of putting together what you've learned in the first semester, which was web development, what you learned in the second semester, which was application programming, and it's meant to put those together so you're doing some web application programming, for lack of better words. All right, so that, like I said, that's kind of what we're shooting for in here. All right, I don't know what that is, so let's see. All right. I'm trying to think of how I want to do this next, so. All right. Let me do a quick search here, and then I'll bring something up on screen. So give me just a second here. I want to show this to you where you can see it and I don't have to keep changing screens. So. Okay, hopefully what you can see on your screen right now is a website that I created. It just at the top says, "Welcome to our gym." This is probably similar to the one I'm going to have you create to get us back into the flow of things, etc. So on the first page, you will put in some kind of a simple, fairly simple at least, slideshow where you can have different stuff come in here. This is just garbage text, and you'll have your typical heading, you'll have your footer, you'll have a nav bar, etc. Here's a logo. All right. You probably will skip the about page, but if you look here, here's the about page, and you'll notice that if I come here, I've got this real big, so let me cut it down. That if I click here, you can see how this changes, and this was done with jQuery. All right. But there's a lot of different ways that this could be done. But what I'm concerned with, there's an FAQ page. This was done with jQuery as well. But what I'm concerned with are these last two pages. All right, here's BMI. And I'm going to ask you to basically replicate something like this, but there will be specific instructions on how I want it to be done. All right. And we will also go in and have a contact form. And you'll notice if I leave something in here out, it lets me know. And as soon as I put in something in there and run it again, that goes away. All right. So I can keep doing this. And you'll notice how all that stuff is going away in the state. I do have to select the state. It doesn't matter which one I select, but as soon as I select, then that goes away. The zip code has to be in one of these formats. So if I come in here and put in 1, it'll come back and say invalid zip code format, or if I put in, it'll do the same thing. But if I put it in either like this, oops, like that, or like this, that it'll take it. And for the cell phone, it'll have to be put in like this. So again, if I put it in and I come in here and I put in 314, okay, now that's wrong. It says invalid phone number format. If I come in here and put it in, it only is accepting it in one format. So if I do this, it's not going to accept it either. It's still going to say invalid phone number format. All right. I don't know why it said all checks passed, but it did. And what it's looking for is really this 314-286. And now all checks passed. All right. So who cares? Why am I even showing you this stuff? Well, I want to make sure that you can create a simple website like this, which in my opinion, it is a fairly simplistic website. So I'm going to lay this out. I've got the stuff in pieces, but I've got to put it together, and you'll get this tomorrow as part of your assignment. All right. And I will ask you to create this. I'm not going to give you any of this stuff. I don't care what you put in here. If I ask you to do this, find your own pictures. These are either from Unsplash or Pexels or something. I don't even remember. All right. Now, I don't think I had time when I did this to make it, well, I guess it's semi-responsive. See, the title's not, but you can see the stuff down here is. The images are, etc. But it's not fully responsive. This I don't think is at all. Again, semi-responsive is the best I'd call it. That is, again, I guess that's responsive. This is, but notice that when if I leave something off, it looks kind of ugly right now. And same with this. All right. But what I'm going to ask is that you go in and you make sure that by using CSS Grid and Flexbox, ideally in tandem with one another, that this looks really professional. All right, so I'll show you a way of laying out the pages. So you're going to have that as part of your first assignment. And I'm going to ask you to create a couple of JavaScript programs over and above this as part of your first assignment. All right. So what I'd like you to do right now, all right, I'm only gonna go to, for about 10 more minutes, and pretty much I'm done for the day. I'm gonna stay on here. I'll be on for the rest of the day. All right. But there's a couple things I want to do first. John had asked about this ahead of time. So I'm going to come out here and let's see. I'm going to go out here right now and I'm going to go to download Visual Studio Code. All right. And it's code. Let's see. Yep. code.visualstudio.com download. Okay. And I'll choose the one for Windows. I've already got it on my system, but I've got an older version. So I'm going to go out here to Control Panel. You probably can't see me do this, but I'm going to go over to my Programs and Features. I'm going to find Visual Studio Code in here. And it looks like I already did remove it. Let's look. Let me check here. Visual Studio Code. Yep, I do have it. All right, so I'm going to uninstall it right now. I always recommend that if you're going to put a new version of something in, that you uninstall the old one, but that's always your call. I would recommend that you go out to Git and, by the end of the period today, and uninstall Git and reinstall it so you've got the newest version, and do the same thing with Visual Studio Code. There's probably nothing at all wrong with the version you got, but there might be some additional features or functionality that you don't have that's available now. Okay, so from right here, I'm going to go, I think I'll go to the System Installer 64-bit. Okay, and it's going to download it right here. As you can see, it'll be in my Downloads folder. So you probably can't see this, but if I click on it and I choose show in folder, it's going to show me my downloads folder. There it is. So I'm going to right mouse click on it here and choose open. It may beep and ask me for, for permission. It may not. It is. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to accept the agreement that comes up. Click next, and I'm going to choose every next that's in here. I'm going to choose all the defaults. So next, where I want to put next for the folder, I'm going to keep the default things for the additional tasks. All right, and I'm going to click install. And once I do that, it's already 2/3 installed, 3/4 installed. It's done. So that doesn't take any time at all to do that. All right. So we've got that, and it'll start this up. All right. Now, a couple things I wanted to show you here. So I got to change again my share. All right, hopefully you can see my Visual Studio screen here. And where this becomes a little bit important now is over here. Where is it? Source control search. Oh, wow, they changed this. Okay. There, under additional views, there's now extensions. All right. And while we're talking about this, notice, hopefully you can see this on your screens as well. It says extensions, and it also says Thunder Client. We're going to be using, when we start testing some of our own code, we're going to be using something that's called Postman. All right. Well, Microsoft, as you know, likes to monopolize just about everything they can. So Thunder Client that you see right there is Microsoft's answer to Postman. So we may end up using both of them just so you get a little flavor of using each one. All right, so I'm going to go over to extensions here. All right, and when I search it, what you're going to notice is if I put in React, all right, it's going to come back and it's going to say ES7 React Snippets. Who cares? Well, what that is going to allow me to do, and mine's already installed, but what that's going to allow me to do is when I want to pre-write some stuff, rather than having to go and type a bunch of stuff in, I can hit a couple of keystrokes and it'll put things in for me. All right. And there's some other ones in here too. I'm trying to remember what else was in here. There's a full stack one, but there is a React. I thought there was a React syntax or something like that. Of course, you got to spell it right. But there's something like that in there. And what that does is it'll be a syntax highlighter. All right. So in other words, when you use keywords in these different languages that we're going to be using, all right, when you start to use these keywords, all right, they'll be highlighted like this stuff is for you. All right. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go till about 2 o'clock and I'm going to let you leave for the day. So what I'm going to ask that you start to do between 2 and 4 is please sign up for those 2 West Bowes classes and start taking a look through them. Part of your grade on your first assignment will be, did you use CSS Grid and or Flexbox? Did you use them correctly? Is your website responsive? All right. So, that'll give you a chance to go in and start looking at some of that stuff today. And we'll start hitting this a little harder than tomorrow. All right. But before we do, I was going to show you, not that it's a big thing one way or the other, and I may have even shown this to some of you already. But what I want to show you in here is a couple of examples of things we've done in the past with this that we're going to do similar types of things in our class. So I was going to show you a couple of different projects. All right. John, hopefully that gave you enough to get you started with Visual Studio Code. There's not really much more to it than that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go back to my desktop. You may not be able to see this for a second. Don't worry about it. So again, if you've seen this already, sorry if I bore you for a couple minutes here, but let's see. Hopefully I'm bringing up the right one. I'm doing a couple things behind the scenes here just to get this all ready. So when I run it, it'll be done and you can see what it looks like. So.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Is your repo up on your GitHub?
It should be. Yeah, remind me. I'll give you that before we leave today.
Okay.
So this is one that we built last semester that utilized React. And again, if you've seen it already, sorry about that. But so it looks like this. I don't know. Let me make sure I'm sharing. All right. So right here, if I come in here and type in Avengers and I search, it's going to show me the Avenger movies. How did it find this? It went out, the program went out on the internet and it searched imdb.com. IMDb is the Internet Movie Database. And it found out anything that's got Avengers in it. So notice not only is there the Avengers that you're probably used to, but this was a TV show that was on in the 60s, the Avengers. So if I go back again and put in Harry Potter like I had, and I just choose any one of these, now it gives me that and it gives me some information. So this is information pulled out directly from imdb.com. So in other words, this is information that went out to the Internet Movie Database API and grabbed that information. So we're going to do that kind of stuff. We'll build another one with the weather. I've got one that I built that goes out by the stock market, etc. All right. Now the question just got asked, so let me put it up there. In fact, I'm going to do this. Let's see. So let me change my share again. Hopefully you can see this right now, https github.com, etc. Everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, and it should be that, I would guess .git. Let me double check. I'm going to go out to GitHub and make sure because I did that off kind of the top of my head. So let's see. Yeah, I think it was that. So if you go out there, yeah, that's got all the stuff in it. And like I said, I think at least it's worth your time and effort to go in and go through those less bows lessons. If you don't want to do that, and I know I mentioned this before, but I am going to say it again because I've watched it on more than one occasion. All right, sorry about that. My internet just went down. So hopefully everything, I'm still going to be able to have it on tape in here because I sure as heck don't want to do this again. All right. So go through there. What I was going to show you was if you go out to YouTube, you can go out and search for Evan Gudmested Flexbox, and he's got a really good presentation that he's done with that. All right. With that said, like I said, sorry about this. I don't know what the heck happened, but it went down and it came right back up again. All right. So I will talk to you tomorrow. If you get a chance, start taking a look at the Flexbox and the grid, and also take a look at the JavaScript folder that I gave you. And then that JavaScript folder, take a look at, because we're going to go over a couple different things. We're going to go over some of the string methods that you need, some of the array methods that you need, and we're going to start looking at some of the ES6 stuff that was added to JavaScript. All right. Anybody have any other questions? All right, not hearing anything then, that'll be it for today. Like I said, I knew it wouldn't last the entire period, so I'll see you first thing at 12:05 tomorrow.